Hey there, this is Anthony from mycodeteacher.com. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to pass data along of a stack of view controllers in a navigation controller. So what I mean by that is, in a lot of applications you have a view controller stack where you continuously push new view controllers onto a navigation controller, and as you go along in this stack, you have some data. You want to collect all the data as you go along and then combine it all in the final view controller and display it or save it or whatever. And so I'm going to show you two different ways of doing that in this lesson. So of course we're going to begin with creating a new project in Xcode here. I'm going to go with window-based application. I'm going to call it passing data. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to open up main-window.zib and we want to get the navigation controller as a subview of the main window here. So in the library, we're going to scroll to the top and let's drag a navigation controller instance onto the instances window. And now let's go back to passing data app.delegate.h and add an IB outlet to make the connection to this navigation controller that we just created in an interface builder. I'm going to call it navigation controller. Of course, we're doing this so that in code we can add this navigation controller as a subview to the window. So I'm going to right-click and drag from the passing data app.delegate object and connect the navigation controller outlet. Now let's save this. Now go back to passing data app.delegate.m and add this navigation controller as a subview to the window. Okay, I'm going to save this. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to create our initial view controller. So I'm going to go into Xcode. I'm going to select the classes folder here. I'm actually going to expand this. We're going to create a new view controller subclass. Make sure to have with zib for user interface checked off so that the interface builder file that will be associated with this view controller is created and set up automatically. I'm going to call this first view controller. I like to have my zip files in the resources folder. Really a matter of preference, it doesn't actually matter, but I'm going to keep that there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go back to interface builder and get that first view controller in the navigation controller when the application first launches. So we can click in here. We're going to put first view controller for the zib in here, and then we're going to click the identity inspector and make the class first view controller. So now when this navigation controller is loaded, it'll also create an instance of first view controller with the zib file, firstviewcontroller.zib, and then display it as its initial view controller in this area here. I'm going to save this. And so now we're done with the main window.zip file, so I'm going to close this. Now let's get working on our first view controller. So I'm going to open firstviewcontroller.zib. What we're going to have here is we're going to have a text field in this view and a button, and when the button is pressed, a second view controller is going to appear on screen, and whatever was typed in the text field on the first view controller will appear in a label on the second view controller. And so you'll see how we make a connection between two view controllers in the stack. So let's, in the library here, scroll down, let's get the text field on here. And let's get a button going. I want to make the title of this button push second view controller. Or actually just push second view. Now I'm going to save this, and now we need an outlet to connect to the text field so we can access the text that was typed in it. And then we need an IB action to connect from the button to the file's owner here, or the first view controller, so that when the button is pressed, some action is committed, or the second view controller is pushed on screen. So in firstviewcontroller.h, let's begin with the outlet to the text field. I'm going to call it text field. Save this, and let's go back to interface builder and make that connection. And now let's put the IB action in it we want. We're going to call it push second view. Again, save. Now let's go back to interface builder and right click and drag from the button to file's owner and connect the push second view action. Okay, so now we need to make our second view controller so that we can actually make use of it in the .m file and push on a second view when the push second view action is committed here when the button is pressed. So again, I'm going to select the classes folder here, new file, another UI view controller subclass, and this we're going to call second view controller. I'm going to drag down this also to the resources folder. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there's going to be two different ways we do this. The first way, we're going to give the second view controller a property, an NSString property, for the data that we want to pass along. In this case, it's going to be a string, what's in the text field. So we're going to give it an NSString property, and then when we initialize this second view controller object and we attempt to push it onto the navigation controller from first view controller when the button is pressed, first set this property of second view controller equal to what's in the text field in the first view controller, and then push it onto the navigation controller's view controller stack. So let's set that property up. So we're going to give this an NSString property. We're just going to call it label string. Save that. Now we need to make this to a property. Make it read, write, copy. And now, of course, we need to synthesize this. Now we can go back to first view controller and implement the push second view method, but of course first we need to import the second view controller. So we're just going to implement this method here, push second view. So first we're going to create an instance of this second view controller. We're going to call it sview. Of course, if we put nil in for the bundle, the main bundle will automatically be used. So now here is where the connection is made. Before we push this onto the screen, we're going to give the second view the contents or the string in the text field in this first view simply by setting the property. And that way, we can go back to second view controller and make use of the string, the set property. Label string equals text field dot text. And now the second view controller has the value of this text field. And of course, you can do this as many times as you want for as much data as you like. It doesn't have to be just a string. It could be an integer, a float, a double, anything at all. Now we're going to push this onto the navigation controller. We can save. And now we need to set up our second view controller. So let's open this interface builder file. We're going to want to have a label here that will display the text that was in the first view controller's text field. So let's drag a label onto the screen. And I'll align this in the center. Now we need to make an outlet and connect it to that label. So we're going to go to second view controller.h and make that IB outlet. And so now our second view controller zip file is set up. We can get rid of that. And so now the last thing we need to do to complete this is in the viewDidLoad method here, we're going to set the text of the label in the interface builder file equal to label string. Now let's save this. Now let's give it a shot. Let's just type in any text here. And you can see that the text that we typed in the text field in the first view shows up in the label in the second view. Now this is, as I mentioned earlier, there's two ways to do this. This is the first way. This is the way I've always preferred, but a lot of developers prefer the second way I'm going to show you. The second way is, for the newer view controllers, you always give them a reference back to the previous view controller. So here, we're going to give second view controller a reference back to first view controller, and then we're going to make the text field for the first view controller a property so that it's public or accessible in second view controller, and then simply access the text there. So let's go to second view controller.h and get rid of this property here that we have set up. And instead, we're going to give this new property, which is actually a first view controller object, and of course it's going to be the first view controller, the view controller that was previously on screen. So let's go to the file. We need to use the @class keyword here so the compiler doesn't freak out when it sees first view controller. And we're going to create a property out of this. So we're going to call it parent view. We're going to make it read write, but of course it needs to be a sign. It can't be copy, because if it's copy, when the second view controller is given a value for this parent view property, it's going to make a copy of it, and so it won't actually be the exact first view controller. It won't be the one that actually shows up on screen. It'll be another one floating around in memory somewhere. So this needs to be a sign and not copy. Retain would also work, but I'm just going to go with a sign here. Let's synthesize this. And now let's go to first view controller, and let's turn this text field here into a property. And now instead of setting the label string property here and giving the second view controller the text in the text field, we're actually just going to say sview.parentView equals self. And so now the second view controller has a direct connection to this view controller, the first view controller. And so now we have one last thing to do here. Instead of using label string, we're going to set the text equal to parentView.textField.text. And let's build this and give this a shot. And you can see we've accomplished exactly the same thing. So there's two ways to send data along a stack of view controllers in a navigation controller. Whichever you prefer is totally fine. No way has an advantage over the other. It's really just the way you prefer to get the job done. But one of these two ways is definitely the best way to send data along. Well, that concludes this lesson on passing data along a stack of view controllers. I'm Anthony from mycodeteacher.com. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you tune into future lessons. Thank you very much for watching.